People of Reddit, if you have ever hired a prostitute, call girl, or escort, how did the night/encounter/transaction go? I've hired several, after I left my long-term girlfriend, and was too depressed to start a new relationship. It's been anywhere from bad to glorious. But, walked into a massage parlor without knowing what to expect. The masseuse wasn't very attractive, but offered $6, so I said yes. Wouldn't do again. I was slightly traumatized. Okay, walked around in Amsterdam, and decided to go for some of the girls in the windows. Nice experience to have quick sex with extremely hot girls, but it felt a bit meh when it was over so soon. However, the walking around part is awesome. You feel like you're looking at an amazing restaurant's menu, except it's about an activity that's much better than eating. Nice. Went to a German FKK. You can relax, go swimming, go to a sauna, eat well, get a real massage, just like at a normal spa, except there are naked women walking around everywhere, and Kingdom is just one of the things you do to relax. It's like going to a nightclub, except you don't hate yourself afterwards. It could be heaven, but I kept feeling like I need Viagra despite being fairly young. 9/10 would bang again. Mind blowing. Went to Japan and hired an escort for the evening. Had dinner and got to know her a bit better. Then went to a love hotel where we first went to the sauna and chatted for a long time, after which she washed me like I was goddamn James Bond and You Only Live Twice. Then we hung around listening to good music and king while having better conversations than any legit girl has ever even tried to offer me. 11/11 will go again. For my friend's 18th birthday I took him to lose his virginity. We went downtown and went window shopping, and I told my friend I would cover the expense of this trip and all he had to do was point out which lady he liked. After a few minutes, he pointed to what could only be described as an African American man in drag. I told him, but as he was drunk as hell, he didn't believe me. Anyways, I walked up and discussed price, approximate $100/1 shot. Fine. I'll pay that for my bro's birthday. So I told the guy lady that I was paying on behalf of my friend and that she would be entertaining him. So my buddy walks over and starts talking. Usual questions like where are you from? And they get acquainted. They start to discuss where this deal will take place, and since my friend lives with his parents and the prostitute didn't want to spend too much of her night on one John, they agreed to do it in the parking lot. I walk away and sit down in a bus stop that has a clear view of their intimate location, which happened to be the parking ticket paying booth off the main downtown. So here they are, a 25 to 30-year-old African American prostitute being ked doggy style by my drunk virgin friend in a ticket booth at a public parking lot at 2 AM on a Friday night. I wasn't really watching, I didn't have much interest, but it was so funny until the police showed up. The lights went crazy and my buddy pulled up his pants and legged it right. The prostitute went left. From my view, I could see the prostitute running and being chased by the police. She didn't make it 300 feet without being tackled to the floor. My buddy, somehow, was able to throw himself into a dumpster and wait it out till I called him. The best part of this story is that as I walked past the police/prostitute back to my car to go pick up my buddy, they had done a search of her and pulled out 2 fake breast cushion things while asking what his name was. I live in a country where prostitution is legal, we have laws around it etc. So it's safer than picking a girl up off the street at least. A buddy of mine had just separated from his fiancée, so I offered him my couch for a week while he got his sorted. A few days in, he brings up that he's been thinking about hiring a girl as a way of getting over everything that had gone down. So I said yeah man, let's do it. He'd already done the research on places in town we could go. So we picked a place that could also offer us a room for a reasonable rate and headed over around 10 PM at night. We sat at the bar with 2 other guys who both looked to be around 40. Me and my buddy were early 20s, kinda awkward, while the available girls made brief appearances and introduced themselves. We each picked our girls, me and my buddy paid for an hour and a room each, and were led by the girls to our separate rooms. Just me and the girl now. We made small talk for a little bit, then she undressed and had a quick shower. I had to have one as well, so I stripped down and she cleaned me while we continued chatting. Once the formalities were over, we got down to it. It was okay, I guess. Doesn't matter, had sex right. It felt good, but it was really strange having sex with someone who had no mutual desire for it. It was hollow. An interesting experience, but probably not one I'd repeat. In Australia, where it's illegal, booked a girl in a brothel, smoked cigarettes, got naked, she returned her cut of the money so I could book for longer, went back to my work and drank wine, and talked nonsense until the sun came up, went back to my place to sleep, etc, etc. Got married. Hired one, did the deed, then I ran her over to get my money back, and ran over pedestrians the rest of my night. I hired a prostitute having not had a girlfriend in a while. I was out of a long-term relationship, and had basically forgotten how to start new things. I picked out a really cute girl, nice tan dark hair, cheeky smile, and paid for an hour as I didn't want the added pressure of being against the clock. We went into the bedroom, and before I'd even sat down she pulled off her dress, leaving her in just her underwear, which was a bit of a shock as it usually doesn't happen that quickly in real life. But whatever, that's what I'm here for. She asks how we are going to spend a full hour and I say it's up to her. She lies on her front and gets me to massage her back for a bit. We start talking about where she's from, what kind of stuff she's into, the same about me. Then she jumps up and we swap positions and she's massaging my back. She says I smell really good and I'm handsome. She slaps my butt and says I have a cute one. I enjoy it. She flips me over, pulls down my boxers and starts doing the rest. I notice in the light that her hair has a purple tint to it. I ask if she dyes it, and she says yes, seemingly really pleased that I've noticed. She goes over to the bedside lamp and shows me how it changes shades in the light. She asked if I wanted to have sex now, so gets into the doggy position on the bed, but I'm not really into it, and she can tell. We end up doing a sort of naked embrace, where I'm drawing pictures on her back with my fingers and we are chatting about life. I give her ass a playful slap in return, and she smiles back, but then we notice the hour is up. She says she's really sorry that we didn't complete any of the acts, but that I should come back, and we'll give it another go. I say it's cool, because I had a really good time, and in truth, I really did. On my way out she tells me to stop, so I do, and she says she's just checking out my butt again, and waves me off. I know all of that stuff is part of the service, but I really enjoyed it. I often thought about going back, just to spend an hour in her company, but recently her profile has been taken off the agency website, so I assume she's left. A close friend of mine has hired a few escorts, 2 in the UK, and 1 in the US. He's not an obvious customer, as he's basically a poor late 20s intellectual type who just doesn't have very good luck with women. Both of the UK experiences were good. He was quite nervous at first, and spent the first half of his allotted time chatting with the escort about books and life, but then got down to business and basically enjoyed himself. His ongoing experience with an escort in the US seems a bit unbelievable, but anyway, as before, he spent the first part of the encounter just chatting with the escort about books, movies, her life, etc. After the main event, she said something along the lines of haha, you should come back again, in a friendly, mildly awkward sort of escort to customer way. He laughed himself and then admitted that he couldn't really afford to. Long story short, she asked him out. Their first date involved brunch and a museum. It sounds like she wanted to sleep with him. She kept asking if he lived nearby, but he sort of put that off to make sure she doesn't feel like that's her only value to him as a human being, but I imagine it'll happen again. Throwaway because prostitutes are fun. I've had sex with 3 prostitutes on a long weekend trip to Amsterdam for a friend's birthday. The first 2 were somewhat unsatisfying for me sexually, didn't really feel comfortable, wasn't adventurous in positions, plus I was drunk as hell 4/10. DM, HS. The third was glorious, a beautiful Asian woman called Sarah, around 30 years old. We hit it off, and humped like rabbits. We started having sex around 4 AM after a great night round Amsterdam Center. We agreed the usual going rate €50 for an hour of sex. However, I noticed the clock on the wall. It was around 5:30 AM, but I kept my mouth shut because free sex. She eventually told me she wanted to go home, as daylight was approaching, and she asked me if I wanted to stay the night at her place. Being a horny drunken 21-year-old, I decided this would be a great idea. We got to her place after a short bike taxi thing. We got to her place, a huge fancy apartment, Apple TVs max. It really was a beautiful home. I was trying to work out how many people she must have cared for this place. At €50 an hour it was a lot of men. Anyhow, she made me aromatic duck, some Thai food, and gave me beer. We continued to have sex well up to 11 AM. Our plane was leaving back to the UK that night and my friends were ringing me to see where I had gone. We added each other on Facebook. She regularly likes my photos and leaves awkward comments which I promptly delete. Best €50 I ever spent. My dad's friends hired one for him once, and she was really nervous and didn't know how to handle the situation. He told her to sit down, nothing was happening, and asked her about her life. She broke down crying and told him how she was doing it to get through college, and about her abusive family, and that he was her first customer. She was very grateful to him, and he left on friendly terms after the time was up. Am I the only lady that wishes that this service was readily available with men at the contracted end of the transaction? How I would love to window shop an area, pick out a thickish fella, covered in a thick pelt, and just let him walk around nude in front of me for a while. I'd feed him little finger foods and pet and stroke his hairy body, and then he would service me in a manner of my choosing. Then I'm out. 1. Got some takeout from a stripper once. Went back to her hotel, was nervous as hell. Got to the room, and she told me we couldn't do it on the bed because it wasn't her room, it was her friend's. Long story short, I got rug burns on my knees. Never happened again. 2. HJ from a chick in the back of an adult video store. It's supposed to be a massage parlor but wasn't really. I was nervous as hell, and it was going so badly I just stopped her and jerked it myself while she watched. Never happened again. I haven't personally, but I like this story too much not to tell it. I used to live in Hong Kong, where there is a rather infamous bar called Fenwick. It's basically a bar filled with hookers. You can safely assume just about every woman in there is a prostitute. Go in, see one you like, say hi and go from there. Anyway, we were out in the area of this bar called Wanche doing some college style drinking, dive bars etc. and wound up at Fenwick drunk as balls at like 4 AM. It was the only thing open, and we had a friend in town. We're there, drinking, joking with the hookers, and, let's be honest, they assume you're a potential customer, so they hit on you. It's great for my ego. Anyway, my friend from out of town says something seems off about this bar. I tell him yeah, cause they are all hookers dude. He doesn't believe me, so he wanders over to some girl, starts chatting and asks her, so, what do you do? She dodges the question, so he asks again, and she dodges the question one more time. Eventually the lady behind her gets so fed up, she screams at my friend, what does she do? She has sex for money. This happened to a friend of mine in St. Petersburg, Russia. He purchased the rights to a BJ from a hooker. They eloped to an alley, and while blowing this Russian chick pickpocketed him. As a group, we were in the city for another week and this was most of his money. He only realized the theft an hour later. Drunk and angry, he searched the streets for this thieving whore, and found her near the crime. He confronted her. 3 of us stood by in case got hairy. It did. While these two were screaming at one another, a Russia dude power walked up the block ready to start WWII. As he approached our friend from behind, our friends back up, snatched the pimp up, and beat the out of him. Our friend jerked around, saw what was going down, turned back to the thieving whore, punched her in the face, and stole his money back plus interest. We ran from the scene like there was a crowd of zombies chasing after us. For 2 days we stayed inside the hostel, afraid to peek out the windows. Our minds were finally at ease when we boarded the ferry to Helsinki, Finland 3 days later. I'll never go back to Russia.